Right, hello and welcome to a video on functions or methods, depending on what you want to call them. Now you can call them either, it's fine. I'm going to call them functions mainly, but I'll probably call them methods at some point as well. Now a function or a method is just a way of calling a piece of code from somewhere, and it allows you basically so you don't have to repeat code again. It gets a bit complicated towards the end, but hopefully you will see all the sort of ways you can use functions in C#. So the first one we're going to look at is a very simple one. Now main itself is a function. It's void. Now void means it doesn't return a value, which we'll see in a minute. So let's write our first function. So all you're going to do is say hello function. Okay, so that's the name of the function, and I'm going to close it with brackets. Now brackets you've seen many times before, like toString, console read line. You know, all that essentially means it's a function or a method. Now that function doesn't exist, but I'm trying to call it. So I will create it by clicking on here, generate method stub, so I'll say method there, and there it is. Now I'm going to get rid of that, and there is my function, and in there I'm just going to do one line of code. Hello. Right, so how does that work then? Well, as the program runs, it starts here, this brace goes in here, hello function, jumps out of main into hello function, does all the lines of code in between those curly brackets, and then jumps back to the line after. Now there isn't a line after at the moment, so let's put one in, and if we don't put it, we won't be able to see anything. Right, there we go. So let's run that then, and it says hello. Right, not exactly the most exciting program in the world, but it shows you a way of doing that. Now that is about the simplest function that you're going to ever have. Okay, so you just call it, and here is the function itself. So it begins with private static. Now you don't really need to worry too much about what private and static means, but void is important. That means it doesn't return anything. There's the name of the function, and there's some brackets, and we will actually be looking at stuff that goes in the brackets later. And then we've got hello, and there we go. That's the simplest function we're ever going to get. Now we can also get a function that returns a value, and we can do this, and I'm just going to do this in here. I'm going to say get name, and that is another function. Now this one's going to be slightly different, and we'll generate it for us. Now you'll notice this time it says private static string instead of void. Now what that means is that this function returns a string, and you can almost treat it as if it was a variable. So in here we've got hello plus get name. It's going to return a string, and we're going to whatever that string is. So in here we can do this console write line. Please enter your name, and then we're going to read it in. Now I can just do this. So we need to return, and this is why it's erroring out at the moment there. You need a return on non-void functions, and then I'm just going to write console.readline. Now because it's a string, I don't need to convert it, that's fine. Now I could have declared a variable in here, a local variable, and I'll just show the difference. This is the way I probably prefer to do it. I'll call that name, make that equal to nothing, and then I would normally do it like that. It's exactly the same, but I think that's neater. Okay, more code, but there we go, it does the same job. So now what's going to happen is we're going to call hello function, and then within hello function we call another function called getName. Now the main difference is that getName isn't void. So instead of saying void here we say string, and then we need that word there, the return. If you don't have the return, if I comment that out, it's going to error out. Okay, it's just going to say does not return a value. So you must remember the return for non-void functions. Right, so let's just run that then, and off we go. So please enter your name, Dave. Hello Dave. Right, so that's the second type of function that we're going to use. Okay, and I can put a space there to make it look a bit better. Now what you can also do to complicate matters is use parameters. Okay, so let's do this slightly differently now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to call getName, but this time I'm going to send in the message I want to actually display here. Alright, so I don't know, it's just any idea at all. Right, so I'm going to declare a string in here, and it's going to be called message, and it's going to equal enter your name, and I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to write in here message. Right, and then that should mean I've got an error message now, and this time I could get it to generate a new method for us there, or a function, but we don't want to do that. So I'm going to say in here string message. I could call it. It doesn't have to be called the same thing. Now, so what I'm going to do now is get rid of that and just replace it with message. Right. Now this time we've made it a little bit more complex. Now what we've done now is in this function we've sent off an argument. Okay, so message is sent into getName and it's passed in there like that. And what it's doing now is the value of that is passed in, and then it writes out message. Now the reason why we have to do that is because that variable here is local only to that method or function. It can't be seen outside. So the only way we can pass stuff in between functions is to use arguments and parameters. So that's the parameter here, and that's the actual argument. Now they don't have to be called the same thing, so I could have just called that mess there. Obviously that will error out here, but it's fine, doesn't matter, as long as it's a string no one's going to mind. So I've got to send in a string there, and that's fine. Now let's have a look at, so what we've got there is a function that can return a value and send off a parameter. Now let's have a look at another function. So on this one I'm going to do get value. So I'm just going to do something a bit different now. So I'm going to declare int a, b, c, and ands, and all I'm going to do is add those up. So what I want to do is get values for a, b, and c. Now because I'm going to basically ask the user to enter the values for a, b, and c, why don't I write a function to do that and then just call it 3 times, which is an excellent idea. I think I will. Right, so a equals getNum, and I could send off a message to make it a little bit more, so you could say enter a, then enter b, then enter c, but I'm not going to do that, so I'll just make it easy. getNum, and there we go. getNum doesn't exist, it errors, so let's get it to write it for us, and there we go, there's getNum. So what I'm going to do in here then is 2 things. I'm going to do a console write line, I'm going to say enter a number, and then I'm going to declare an int as well, int value 0. Right, I'm going to say value equals convert dot to int 32, and then console dot read line. Okay, so essentially that read line is a method, or a, there's the brackets there, or a function. Right, so I've got the value there, and then it's erroring out because I haven't returned anything yet, so return value. Right, there we go. So a equals getNum, so I can just repeat that again 3 times, or twice more, 2 more times more, I don't know. A, b, and C. Now that is good, isn't it? Now what we've done there is I've just called that 3 times and I've saved myself quite a lot of coding, so that's quite handy. Right, now next thing I'm going to do is write a function that adds up the answers. Now, there's 2 ways I can do this. I'm going to do it the normal way. I'm going to say ands equals add, and then I'm going to send off A, B and C. Okay, and that's one way of doing it. I'm going to generate that. There you go, there's my new add function, and then I'm just going to say int ands equals 0, and then I'm going to say ands equals, I could have done that one line, but A plus B plus C, and then I'm going to return ands. There we go. So okay, so I run that now, just check it works. 4, 5, there we go, and 1, 59. That's correct. Right, so that worked. That's brilliant. Now, there is another way. Instead of doing it like that, I can also do it like this. I can say add 2. Now I'm going to add 2. Now let's go add version 2, and then I'm going to go right. I'm going to send off A, B, C, and then ref ands. Now what I've got there, actually I'll just write the method first, function first. So right, so we don't get any errors. Now what we have here is it's erroring out on that line there. That's because I didn't give it a value here. So it's always a good value in C# to give variables values. So I should do 2 others, but it was okay because I did it there. Right, so now that's fine. Now let me just finish off this. So I'm just going to say in here ands equals A plus B plus C. Right, and that's it. Now let's have a look what's happened in it. So this is a void function, but I've managed to get a value out. Now the reason why I managed to get a value out is I sent these 3 arguments in without the keyword ref in front of them, but ands has ref in front of it here and here. Now what that means is ands gets passed into ands, but when ands changes in here, the new value gets passed back into ands in main, and then when we update that it shows us ands. Right, so let's just test that. Now the other 3 haven't been put ref in front of them because they didn't get changed, so we'll demonstrate that in a minute. So enter a number, 2, 2, 2, the answer is 6. Brilliant. Now if I get rid of ref, what should happen now is ands will get changed in here, but any changes don't get chucked back into main, so therefore the answer should be 0. So it is 0. Right, so that's no good. So let's put that ref there and a ref there. Now also, just as a side point, you can prove to you that if I say A equals 45,000, A is still worth whatever it was earlier. So if I then did this, to the right line, A should be whatever I put it in here, but not 4,500. So 2, 2, 2. So A should be 2. It is 2. There's the 2. Right. So what have we got then? We've got these 2 functions essentially do exactly the same. So add and add v2. The way it does it though is slightly different. Now, which is best? Well, whichever you prefer. If you're from Python, that's probably the way that you would have been taught how to do it. That's the only way I think you can do it in Python. And then that way is common in quite a lot of languages. So, I mean, whichever you prefer. They all have their downsides. I mean, if you look at that one there, the add v2, 2 lines of code, that one, the add one, 3 lines of code, but there's nothing in it really. It just depends. Now, one of the reasons why you might want to use that is because you can then do stuff with it. You can also go times 3400, so you can treat it like a variable. On the left hand side of an equal sign, you can chuck that in a console write line. You can't with that. All that is, you send off the arguments, and if you want one to come back that's changed, then you can, and then you can then do something with that afterwards. So the choice is yours, whatever you want to use. Right, so that's basically all the sort of ways you can use functions in C#. I don't think there's any more. So that's the simple one. Just call it. It's void. It doesn't return a value. This one here is the next one, where it's no longer void. It returns a value, and the way it's called is different. So you'll be in a console write line, or it'll be on the right hand side of an equals. This is the same sort of thing again, but this time we're sending in a parameter, and up here we've got again sending in parameters just like the other one, last one, and then this one, a void one, does the same as that one, except we're passing in parameters by reference. Okay, that is it. I hope that helps. Goodbye.